Forget everything you thought you knew about pirates from the movies. No talking parrots on every shoulder, no buried treasure maps with a big red X. The real golden age of piracy, from roughly 1650 to 1730, was something far grittier, far more surprising, and honestly, a lot more interesting. Today, we're sailing back in time to meet the real pirates of the Caribbean. So, picture this: you're a sailor in the early 18th century. Your options aren't great. You could join the Royal Navy, where you'd face brutal discipline, disgusting food crawling with weevils, and the constant threat of disease or being worked to death. Or you could sign on with a merchant ship, where the pay is terrible, the captain is a tyrant, and you're just as likely to get sick and be tossed overboard. It was a tough life. Now, imagine a third option appears on the horizon. A ship flying a black flag. They offer you a choice: join them or face the consequences. But joining them means equal shares of any prize, a vote in all major decisions, and a captain you can fire if he gets out of line. Suddenly, that black flag looks less like a threat and more like an opportunity. This was the reality for thousands of men. Piracy wasn't just about random violence. For many, it was a rebellion against the oppressive, brutal systems of the day. A pirate ship was one of the most democratic places on Earth at the time. Before every voyage, the crew would draw up and sign articles, their own constitution. These articles laid out the rules: no fighting on board, lights out at 8 p.m., and, most importantly, how the loot would be divided. Every man, from the captain to the cook, got a share. The captain and the quartermaster usually got a bit more, maybe 1.5 or 2 shares, but that was it. Compare that to a merchant vessel, where the owners and captain took almost everything. And they had an incredible system of social security. The articles included a detailed compensation plan for injuries sustained in battle. Lose your right arm, you'd get 600 pieces of 8.ni. 100 pieces of 8. This was workers' compensation, centuries before it became standard on land. They were creating a fairer society on the high seas because the one on shore had failed them. These crews were also surprisingly diverse. They were a melting pot of nationalities: English, French, Dutch, Spanish, and many formerly enslaved people of African descent who saw piracy as their only path to freedom. On a pirate ship, what mattered wasn't where you came from, but how well you could fight and follow the code. Now, let's talk about the legends themselves. You've heard of Blackbeard, right? Edward Teach, the guy who supposedly tied burning fuses into his massive black beard to look like a demon wreathed in smoke and fire. And yes, he absolutely did that. It was pure psychological warfare. Blackbeard understood that the most profitable battle is the one you don't have to fight. His terrifying reputation did the work for him. Ships would often surrender without a single cannonball being fired. He wasn't just a brute, he was a master of branding and intimidation. His most audacious act: blockading the entire port of Charleston, South Carolina, with his fleet. He held the city hostage, not for gold or jewels, but for a chest of medicine. It was a bold, brilliant move that cemented his legendary status. Then there's Calico Jack Rackham. He wasn't the most successful or fearsome pirate, but he's famous for 2 reasons. First, his flag, the classic skull and cross swords, one of the most iconic pirate designs ever. Second, and more importantly, 2 of his crew members were the most famous female pirates in history, Anne Bonny and Mary Read. These women defied every convention of their time. They dressed as men, they fought with pistols and cutlasses, and they were respected as equals among the crew for their courage and ferocity. When their ship was finally captured, the story goes that while Calico Jack and the rest of the men were too drunk to fight, Anne and Mary fought like lionesses until they were overwhelmed. They were living proof that the pirate world, for all its dangers, could offer a strange kind of freedom that was impossible to find anywhere else. But what about the treasure? Was it all about chests overflowing with gold coins? Not really. The most common treasure was much more practical. Things like food, water, alcohol, sails, ropes, cannons, and weapons were far more valuable for a pirate crew's survival than a pile of gold. They often captured entire ships and either added them to their fleet or sold them. One of the most sought-after prizes was medicine. As we saw with Blackbird, sickness could wipe out a crew faster than any naval cannon. Of course, they did capture valuable cargo like sugar, tobacco, and textiles, which they would sell in pirate-friendly ports like Port Royal in Jamaica or Nassau in the Bahamas. These towns were the Wild West of the Caribbean, bustling hubs where pirates could spend their loot on drink and revelry. The democratic nature of pirate life even extended to justice. The quartermaster, elected by the crew, served as a check on the captain's power. He settled disputes, distributed supplies, and led the boarding party during an attack. If the captain became tyrannical or incompetent, the crew could simply hold a vote and depose him. They could even maroon him on a deserted island, the ultimate vote of no confidence. This system, this pirate republic, was a radical experiment in liberty and self-governance. It was a direct challenge to the absolute power of kings and captains that ruled the rest of the world. So, why did the Golden Age end? Well, the powers that be couldn't tolerate this rebellion forever. The navies of Britain and Spain began a massive campaign to hunt them down. They offered pardons to any pirate who would give up the life, and huge bounties for those who wouldn't. Famous pirate hunters like Woodus Rogers were sent to clean up the Caribbean. One by one, the great captains were captured and executed. Blackbird was killed in a bloody battle off the coast of North Carolina. Black Bart Roberts, arguably the most successful pirate of all, who captured over 400 ships, was killed in a fight with the Royal Navy. Their public executions were meant as a warning, and it worked. By the 1730s, the Golden Age was over. The rebellious spirit was crushed. But the legacy of these pirates endures. They weren't just simple thieves. They were rebels, outcasts, and pioneers who created a surprisingly progressive and democratic society in the face of a cruel and unjust world. They were a vivid, violent, and fascinating chapter in the story of the fight for freedom. The real story is so much richer than the Hollywood fantasy. It's a story of rebellion, of surprising fairness, and of ordinary people choosing a dangerous liberty over a safe servitude. Thanks for joining me on this voyage into the real world of pirates. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss our next historical deep dive. Let me know in the comments which historical figure you'd like to see us cover next. Until then, stay curious.